It's a complex situation, but I'll do my best to explain. I have a bio son, Leo, 16, from my previous relationship. I married his stepmom, who is a mother of 2 boys, Connor, 20, deceased, and Derek, 12. I've never had the pleasure to meet Connor, who tragically passed away from a motorcycle accident. Derek was so devastated by this loss, and although it's been years, he's still pretty much grieving. I've seen tons of pictures and videos of Connor and made efforts to get to know who he was as a way to share Derek's grief and be there for him, to lend an ear and a comforting shoulder. It's safe to say that Derek and I grew a strong bond in no time. But my son Leo isn't close to Derek. Understandable, because not all siblings and step-siblings are the same. Leo and Derek are different in everything, which isn't a bad thing, but Leo calls himself the brutally honest type and makes insensitive comments about Derek most of the time. They tend to be under the guise of advice. Derek never complained, so I had to step in and tell Leo to stop being insensitive towards his stepbrother, especially with everything regarding Connor and his memory. Leo would say, "Okay, I get it, and I won't do it again." Days ago, Leo wanted to hang out with friends and asked Derek if he wanted to join. Derek agreed and put on Connor's hoodie before going out. Leo commented on the hoodie and called it ugly and asked him to put on something else, but Derek insisted on wearing it or not go. Leo dropped it. Hours later, Derek came home crying with his hoodie in hand. He said Leo and friends cut it into pieces while he was in the bathroom after they convinced him to take it off. I was furious. I asked Leo, and he said it was his friend's idea, then said he had to do it since Derek wears it everywhere, and it looked old and embarrassing. I reminded him who this hoodie belonged to, and he said, "So what? Maybe this will help him move on in life." I told him his birthday was cancelled and his friends aren't welcome anymore. He pitched a fit saying his birthday was a right, not a privilege, and I can't cancel it. He had my ex criticize my decision and wanted to host his birthday party, but I refused because he's grounded, so no party anywhere. She and her family called me awful and ridiculous and asked me to think how Leo will hate me for this, but I insisted he needed punishment for putting his stepbrother through this. When I was 19 and a sophomore in college, I had a boyfriend I thought I really loved. Looking back, maybe it was just teenage puppy love infatuation. Not sure, but I guess it's not important. I know I'm very biased and what I want is what's best for my daughter, but I think my feelings are getting in the way of that. I had been with Tom for about 8 months at that point. He was on the baseball team and very popular. But one day I discovered I was pregnant and told Tom. He freaked out and got super pissed. He demanded I get an abortion, said he would not stay with me otherwise. He did offer to pay the full expenses of it though. So I went to the clinic and I couldn't do it. I'm very pro-choice and told myself the logical thing to do would be to have an abortion. But when it came down to it, I just couldn't do it. I admit part of it was that I was afraid, but I also felt an attachment for my baby. The thought of getting rid of him / her made me feel like throwing up. So I told Tom that I did love him and I wasn't trying to trap him, but I simply couldn't have an abortion. Maybe we could look into adoption, but abortion was out. Tom said he had never loved me, and while I was fun, I was now causing him too much trouble for him to bother with me anymore. And I was right, I wasn't going to trap him. He said I was free to choose to keep the baby, and he was free to choose to have nothing to do with me or it, and to not even think of trying to get child support from him. I won't go into details, but Tom made it clear he would make life as miserable as possible for me if I tried to contact him again, get child support, etc. Maybe it was wrong to do, but I figured all that trouble and drama just wasn't worth it and I would make my own way. I was, however, devastated and completely heartbroken. I admit it really me up. I never spoke with or saw Tom again. I did consider adoption, but in the end, long story short, I chose to keep my child. Faith is 4 now. It's been a long and hard road, but I graduated college and got a job. We live in a tiny apartment and finances are tight, but we make do. I love Faith like crazy and I do not regret the choice to keep her whatsoever. She makes me a better person and we have a good life. However, 3 days ago I received a letter in the mail. It was from Tom. Inside the envelope was a letter and a check for $3,000. This is what the letter said: "Vika, I know this is coming out of nowhere and I'm sorry, but I didn't know a better way to do this. I am so sorry for how I acted 5 years ago. I was selfish and a complete fool. I know that doesn't begin to cover it. These past 5 years have really had an effect on me. I got a job at Restraint. I started hanging out with different people. Good people instead of college jocks. I know I ran from my responsibility and I treated you with callous cruelty. I know I can't undo what I did, but I want to make it right. Here is a check for $3,000 for Faith. I know that doesn't begin to cover what her expenditures have been, but I wanted to show I am serious about what I'm about to say. I want to be a part of our daughter's life. I will go as slow as you like. I would very much like to set up regular child support payments as well as pay off whatever back child support I owe you for the past 5 years, including hospital appointments during your pregnancy. I know I don't deserve it, but I want to meet my daughter and be a part of her life in whatever way I can. I want to help her and I want to help you and start making up for the terrible way I acted. Here is my contact information. I am willing to do what you ask of me. Thank you for your time. Tom. I was blown away. I'm also beyond pissed off. I'm thinking of the pregnancy I had to deal with after getting dumped like that. Exams and papers I had to write. Giving birth to her on my own. The late night feedings, all the diaper changes, the constant crying. Trying to afford clothes to keep Faith warm during the winter as she grew while also making sure she didn't go hungry, the tantrums. The first steps, first words, the potty training. He wasn't there for any of that, and now he just wants to come waltzing into her life like nothing happened. After doing whatever he felt like now that Faith is out of the unfunny baby years and she's a well-behaved child who can now carry on a conversation and knows how to use toilet and doesn't wake up every 2 hours. Faith has started asking questions like, where is her daddy? How come she doesn't have a daddy? And I've been doing my best. I've been saying mommy doesn't know where daddy is, true until now. And she doesn't have a father because daddy wasn't ready to be one when she was born. Maybe that's the wrong answer, but I am doing my absolute best. I'm thinking of how Tom hurt me and bailed when life got hard. I can't stand the thought of him doing that to Faith. She's a sweetheart and quite sensitive. She doesn't understand unkindness. She makes friends with everyone and is very innocent. I've done my best to teach her to be a calm, kind, respectful person and everyone loves her. However, I do know she needs a good male role model in her life and I do feel guilty for not having one for her. I haven't had a boyfriend or dated since Tom because all my energy and focus has been on graduating college, getting a job, and being a good mother to my daughter. I never really thought about Tom much after Faith was born, but now that I am with this intrusion into our lives, I think I hate and despise him. I want him to just go away. I wanted to not even cash the check and to tell him to take his money and shove it, but my parents and close friends reminded me that that is Faith's money and she is entitled to it, and I agree. At minimum, I want to get some child support going because Faith deserves all the financial assistance and opportunities she can get. However, I know if I get regular child support, Tom will want to be in Faith's life, and frankly, I don't want that. I don't want him to hurt her and bail when life gets hard, because it is when you have a kid. I also feel like he doesn't deserve her. 4-year-olds are a lot more fun than infants. How convenient he suddenly shows up and wants to be a dad when the hardest part is out of the way. But I honestly do want what's best for Faith. I think she deserves to have a good daddy. I just don't think Tom is. I think Faith is better off having no dad than a bad or half-assed one. She deserves the money. But am I right to take the money and not give Tom any access to my daughter? I can't stand the thought of him hurting her. The thought of dropping her off at his house where I don't have access to her makes me want to scream and run away. Am I out of line for taking Tom's money but saying that's as close as he will ever get to her? I am not convinced in the slightest he has changed. I feel like this is guilt money and I want to throw that check in the trash. But it's Faith's money, not mine. Faith and I have a good life and I feel like Tom is going to ruin that. But is it right to keep Faith from her biological parent when he has sent the money? I hate feeling like I owe her him because of that. P.S. College boyfriend dumped me after I got pregnant and threatened to ruin my life if I tried to talk to or get child support from him. Almost 5 years later, I get a $3,000 check in the mail and a letter apologizing for what he did and saying he wants to be a dad. I want to tell him to stay the hell away from us, but I want what's best for my child. Tom is listed as the father on the birth certificate. My sister-in-law and I have an agreement. She watches my kids 3 days a week, and I watch hers 3 days a week. This agreement has stood since March 2020 without issues. Any changes have been discussed weeks in advance. A couple weeks ago, we had an argument. The next day, I brought my kids to her house, dropped them off, and left. I didn't speak to my sister-in-law, because when one of us is in a rush, like I was, it's standard for us to just let the kids out, stay in the car, and drive off when you see the door open. I drove to work, about 40 minutes away. When I got there, I had about 20 missed calls, and even more texts, all from my sister-in-law, all saying she didn't want to watch the kids given our argument. Her first text arrived a little before I got to her place, but I didn't see it until I got to work because my phone is always on silent when I drive. I rang her, said I'll arrange to work from home, then come get the kids. She said I have 45 minutes to get back to her place or she would call the police. I told my supervisor the situation, and she said I could leave after I did a few things. This delayed me 20 minutes. When I got back to my sister-in-law's, just over an hour later, she said she'd already called the police when the 45 minutes ran out. I then had to stick around long enough to tell the officer that I didn't abandon my children, there was just a communication issue. Sister-in-law and I had another shouting match later over this. I arranged other childcare for my kids and I've been mostly ignoring her since. However, she reached out and apologized, and has asked if I'd be willing to go back to the old childcare arrangement. I work with kids. If I got child abandonment on my record, I would never work in my field again, which she knew. And her calling the police was a massive overreaction, so if she needs a babysitter she can go whistle for all I care. She said that if I checked my phone, talked to her that morning, or came back when I was supposed to, she would not have needed to call the police, and I did this to myself. As she gave me a warning with that first text and I could have checked my phone or spoken to her directly when I got to her place. All of which she says she would have done if she were in my position, given that we'd argued the night before. I've told her that if she thinks I'm babysitting for her, she's delusional, and she's on her own. Because of my refusal, it's looking like she may have to quit her job because my brother and her would pay more for a babysitter than they would earn from her working. My mother and brother have both called me an arsehole because there were no consequences to her calling the police, and that while she overreacted, she's apologized, so if I really forgive her, I'll let us move on. This income loss would also mean that she, my brother, and my niece and nephew might need to move somewhere cheaper. That my brother might have to take on extra hours at work. And in an extreme scenario they may even be completely unable to live independently, meaning they'd have to move in with her parents, who live several hours away. I have a cousin by marriage, husband's cousin, that's 22 and dying of cancer. It was always her dream to marry and be a mom, and now that's not going to happen. It's hard on everyone. She has a much older fiancé, 30 years, and they had a symbolic wedding so she could have the experience. They started looking for ways to get access to a baby that she could take care of and experience some level of child care that way. But with 2020 and ethics in general, there's not a lot of ways to do that safely. My husband and I have the first and so far only children of our generation, who are 10 months and 23 months old. I had hopes that it wouldn't happen, but her parents asked me if she / they could borrow my younger baby for a few weeks. The cousin and her fiancé would basically be play acting having a baby. Her parents would also join in on pretending. There would be photo shoots and everything. This makes me really uncomfortable. It's really creepy. I cannot understate how creepy I think this is. I know that her not getting to live her dreams is sad, but I don't think this is the answer. I'm worried it will be traumatic for my baby. She's almost a year old and will, well, notice that her entire family will just vanish overnight for what will seem like forever. She's also still nursing, and they don't really seem to care about this factor. I'm really worried about problems down the road. This is setting a dangerous precedent of my child living under other guardianship. Her parents will have time to get attached and they could try to use that for familial pressure if not legally. Her fiancé is also a wild card in that regard. I said no, and my husband's entire family is hounding us about this because her time is running out and it's time sensitive. They say we're being selfish. They say that we could use this as a free vacation and bond with our older child because I popped them out so close together. They want to compromise now by letting me come by a few times a day to bring milk. We still don't want to do this. Yesterday afternoon, we got an email from the cousin's parents offering actual dollar amounts for us to agree. We got enough from that to file a police report and at least get the threat in writing. We also had a call with my husband's parents and his siblings to basically clear the air. Apparently what they were telling people they asked for and what they were actually asking for were very different. Everyone on that call now had them blocked on social media except for mother-in-law, because of the cousin.